people here are losing their mind over you telling us about a young Vladimir Lenin. And what I find the most interesting about this is a lot of people, especially in the online space, Lenin's a static figure. Whatever you read in State and Revolution is how you see Lenin for his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about where these volumes start and the time frame in which he's writing.
So first, I want to say thanks for giving me the opportunity to do these recaps here. As I said, like going through the 45 volumes, I would do a recap every 5 volumes, and so I already did the first one, and so this is a recap of volumes 6 to 10. But I also want to say by now I've gotten some subscribers and followers and people that comment on the videos, and I'm not the best when it comes to talking on video. I'm not the best when it comes to talking in general. I'm a far better writer. But so this is taking some getting used to, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's like helped so far. Um, so books 6 to 10 cover two critical events in the formation of Russian social democracy and Lenin himself as a character. As you said, he's not a static character, and so we have to understand him. And the first of these events is the creation of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party's platform and the hardening of the factions within it. It's not yet fully the deep divide between Mensheviks and Bolsheviks, but it's the beginning of that. The first dispute was over the role of peasants, for example, and Lenin takes the side that the party, because it embodies the interests of the working class, means that it is not a party that is fighting for the peasants. So that if something comes up in which the interests of the party, as reflective of the working class, is not good for the peasants, they will take the side of the working class against the peasants. And he gets into some debates with the populace over this topic. The populace are trying to appease the peasants more than anything else.
Mhm.
Organizationally, Lenin is advocating for more rigorous training and discipline within the party, which really becomes vivid when debates over the organization of the party emerge at the Second Congress of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party. At that Congress, there's a character, Julius Martov, who kicks off a long-standing dispute with Lenin over the organization of the party. The key question between them was, and it's very simple, but it gets really complicated when other people tell it sometimes. And simply put, it's whether the party should be broadly inclusive of anyone willing to pay dues to be a party member, as Martov believed that they should, or as Lenin believed, party membership and one's ability to operate within the higher bodies of the party structure must be reserved for people who participate in the party's activities and pay dues. And Lenin argued that restricting membership in that way would help avoid opportunism and other threats to the party. It would help avoid opportunists or anarchists from gaining influence in the party's central, committee. So it's a dispute over what is a member of the party? What constitutes being a member? Is it just the fact that you pay dues and you can, rest on your laurels there, or does it actually take some participation? And this dispute, even though it seems so minor, really like fueled divisions within the party. And Lenin recognized, with the help of Gregory Plekhanov, who was sort of pushing him to make amends with Julius Martov, because it's like today, these feuds at first started theoretical and then they started getting personal. And Lenin finally makes the choice to resign from the party's leading organ, Iskra, which is the newspaper. And he wrote after that another one of his most famous works, which is One Step Forward, Two Steps Back, where he expands on his argument in favor of limited membership, and he really expands on the idea of democratic centralism for the first major time. And he argues that centralization from the top down was a way of avoiding deviations in the upper ranks, as I already said. And he says that the party, as the vanguard of the working class, must not be confused with the class itself. So he makes this distinction that there is the party, it represents the working class, but it is not the class itself. So when you start having this mass party idea, you're conflating the class with the party. And so he doesn't want to do that. This is what modern parties like the PSL really base themselves off of, that we are a vanguard. We're not the working class itself. We are a vanguard of the working class. The second major event in these 5 books is the critical, very critical revolutionary year of 1905.
And why is
Uh,
that an important year?
it is what it starts a revolution in what will become sort of a dress rehearsal for 1917, where Russian social democrats, as well as Russians more broadly, not just the socialists, looked on as the Tsarist armed forces were utterly decimated by Japanese forces in the Far East. And Lenin saw the defeat, the fall of Port Arthur, for example, as an indictment of the Tsar's political system. But it wasn't just Lenin that interpreted it this way. Pretty much all of Russian civil society, if we can call it that at the time, considered it that way. And so in January of 1905, students and workers took to the streets in massive numbers to petition the Tsar for not just a constitution of some sort, but for some sort of social regulations in terms of work, in terms of social welfare. And the Tsar's forces responded by gunning them down in what is called Bloody Sunday, not to be confused with the U2 song Bloody Sunday, which is about Ireland's own Bloody Sunday. And Lenin says that while the movement was a revolution in embryonic form, it proved more than anything else that the working class was in fact disorganized and that they needed a more coordinated leadership who could direct them to effective revolutionary agitation. And more importantly, the revolution of 1905 gave the party, finally, the Russian Social Democratic Party, some real life experience in revolution that allowed them to adjust their ideas and expand their arguments. Because prior to this time, it was all just theorizing. They hadn't actually lived through a real revolutionary moment. But finally, 1905, they get it. So debates within the party emerge about what to do in the case of what they call the democratic revolution. That is the bourgeois revolution. And they start talking about, well, what would happen if the bourgeois revolution happens and there's the creation of a provisional government, of a sort of interim government? Where would the party stand in that case? And Lenin says that the party must participate in these bourgeois institutions as they emerge by way of exposing their bankruptcy. So it's not that they need to participate in them because they believe in these institutions. They need to participate in them because it's only through the Russian Social Democrats that the contradictions of these institutions can be really exposed. And so to Lenin, the revolution also proved the need to unite the party behind a common platform. So again, he's making an effort to avoid the factions within the party, to stave this split between Bolsheviks and Mensheviks. And the third party Congress, which he unilaterally calls, is intended to do that, but the Menshevik faction decides to boycott the Congress, and they call it invalid and illegally convened, and so it doesn't happen. And then by October of that year, October 1905, the Tsar had sort of recognized that Bloody Sunday was a huge mistake. Civil society is responding; they're losing faith in him, and his ministers, the people around him, and the bourgeois class finally force him to sign what's called the October Manifesto, which created a legislative Duma that resulted from the revolutionary upheavals of 1905 and also created a lot of new theoretical discourse within the party. So at this point, Lenin defends capitalism actually for the first time and probably more than any other period in his life, because he argues that in order to have the proletariat revolution, capitalism has to develop in Russia to a certain point where the contradictions become so vivid that the system sort of collapses on itself, so that the proletariat revolution, the next logical stage, is sort of a foregone conclusion and everybody's ready for it. He says that Russia can't skip a stage of development, as the anarchists and other opportunists say that Russia should. Russia can skip, the bourgeois revolutionary stage. And when the proletariat does achieve victory, it will come through the arming of the masses after the bourgeois democratic revolution plays out. So we see Lenin making efforts to bridge the gap between Bolshevik and Menshevik factions. And he argues that it's okay for members within the party to disagree on tactics, to have debates within the party conversations, but that once the party votes together on a slogan, for example, uh, everybody needs to come around to it and accept that slogan as the definitive party platform. And this is, again, setting that basis for what democratic centralism means: the freedom to dispute, the freedom to argue, but the unity of action, acting in unison. And so by the time we get to volume 10, that is in November 1905, Lenin returns to St. Petersburg to work towards reorganizing the party and again striving towards party unity. And the important new element was the creation, of course, of the so-called Soviets, or the workers' councils, which, according to Lenin, needed to be composed of all parties and representatives of the working class, not just the Social Democrats. And he's really adamant about this, that the Russian socialists, the Marxists, can't dominate these Soviets. They have to be comprised of the multiple parties that are involved in working class agitation. Except, he says, anarchists should not be part of the Soviets because they don't believe in parties, and because they don't believe in parties, they don't believe in institutions that house parties, where parties can come and debate, and so he excludes them from the possibility of participating. And within the new politically charged atmosphere of post 1905 Russia, Lenin argues that the party needed to widen its work to legally recognized agitation, as well as the existing illegal or underground work. And so he has this whole article where he argues we need to open cafes, we need to start book clubs, we need to, start bookstores, we need to have our own public spaces where we can do the agitation in public, because now this legislative Duma that the Tsar just granted is giving us the possibility to do that. Of course, the possibility to do that is going to be short-lived, but we're not there yet. So the next few volumes will further develop the split of the party, despite Lenin's efforts to try to not split the party. And of course, it will respond to changes that are underway in Russian legislative politics, when most of the people realized that the October Manifesto wasn't really what they thought it was. It was sort of just the Tsar's way of getting everybody to shut up and then taking everything back. So that's where we are at the end of volume 10. So the next recap will be 11 to 15. And still not at the big Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, but we're at the lead up to it. So there's your summary.
What